Hey, Nerd Herd, Dynasty Nerds here, back again, kicking off the 2022 rookie wide receiver breakdowns. There's a lot to talk about in this episode and future episodes where this wide receiver class is a little bit more intriguing than I possibly thought. Some receivers that I like, some receivers that you guys don't like that I like, and some receivers that our producer wants to marry.
I got an Austin, you got an Austin.
And we cover wide receiver 1 overall. Wait and see who that is.
And there's even a Dotson.
Ready, set, hut. Welcome to the Dynasty Nerds Fantasy Football Podcast, where we discuss Dynasty strategy, rankings, and all things NFL. So get ready to geek out on fantasy football with your host, Rich Dotson.
And welcome to the Dynasty Nerds Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Rich Dotson, and my fellow nerds, Matt O'Hara.
Hey.
Garrett Price.
How's it going?
And producing and commentating, Jared Wackerly.
What up?
Jared's got a new shirt he's going to display at some point during this podcast.
It's fantastic.
It's pretty relevant.
Yeah,
So,
just do it. Just do it now.
come on by. Yeah. So
There you
if you don't watch the YouTube channel, you got to watch the YouTube channel. To see
go
this new
subscribe.
shirt. This shirt is available on the podcast, on the show, on the website.
Designed by me.
Designed by, he literally drew that.
Drew that.
In 5 minutes on my iPad.
Yeah.
And it's fantastic.
It's a nice shirt. So
It might be a bit of an inside joke, but hopefully it becomes a hot seller.
I don't say, if you listen to the show, you know exactly why
Yeah.
that's
it's definitely an inside
relevant.
joke for the podcast, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, it's a nice shirt. I mean, not as nice as these Dynasty Nerd shirts.
I
but
put
it's
a
nice.
Nerds logo on the back of it for the shop that we have on our website. This one doesn't have it.
Oh,
Okay.
Ooh, I might have to get one now if that has a Nerds logo on it.
There you go.
I should order one since it's my face.
It is your face.
Should probably do that. Speaking of shirts, if you want one of these sweet ass Dynasty Nerd shirts, which is tri-blend, and you want to uptick the way you look in the mirror, you want to uptick your sex life, the way you whatever.
Do you wear a shirt for that?
Whoever you, for sure.
Okay.
Well, most people do.
To get to that point, you
Yeah.
most of the time you have to walk around,
That's what I was going to say. I was
display yourself.
I mean, if you're a shirt
out in nature
on guy, that's
You
kind of
can't
weird.
pussyfoot around.
No, yeah, you gotta let them know you mean business right away. The way that just like hugs your chesticles, you know what I mean? So get on there, dynastynerds.com. You can buy a shirt, or if you just want to get it for free, right? Like you want a free shirt, hop on to the app, check out our friends at PrizePicks. They're like, Rich, what do I gotta do for that sweet ass shirt? What do I gotta do? I'm like, it's real simple. All you gotta do is go to PrizePicks, make a futures bet. Actually, yeah, that's what you gotta do. You gotta make a futures bet on an NFL futures bet, which is like, hey, will Nick Chubb have over 1,500 yards rushing? Yes or no? That's all I gotta do. $10. That's all I gotta do, and you get a free shirt, and you might win
Some money.
$10. So PrizePicks is the #1 legal prop bet website, right? Like they're gonna hook you up with the most. Right now, if you use it, now another stipulation is you gotta use the promo code NERDS. Because I had some hit me up, they're like, hey, can I get a free shirt? I'm like, yeah, I need an email. Just make sure you use the promo code NERDS. And they're like, oh, I didn't use the promo code. I'm like, I can't get you a shirt.
Doesn't count then.
So you gotta use that promo code NERDS.
There's also, if you click through the link in the podcast description, that'll also count. They track it that way too.
Oh, okay, that's fine
You
too.
click through the link.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Promo code NERDS. Click some links, and they're going to give you whatever money you put up to into $100. They're going to match it 100%. So you put $100 in, you're going to have $200 to start making some prop bets. All you got to do is pick 2 to 5 players and the over/under on their projections, and you can win up to 10 times on your entry. It's just you versus the numbers. It's not that hard. You know what I mean? Like, hey, I think he's going to do this. They think he's going to do that. I think it's wiggity, 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 whack. So right now, you do that. We're going to hook you up with the sweetest shirt out there today. All I got to do is just DM us a screenshot of that at Dynasty Nerds. If you don't have Twitter, again, you can email Jared at dynastynerds.com. And they're going to let you do these prop bets or future bets. They're going to have some bets coming up on the NFL draft, which is going to be pretty sweet, like who would be the first wide receiver taken. And
That'll be interesting.
They got every sport out there. NFL, college football, NBA, college basketball, Major League Soccer, MMA, so much more. You got the Masters coming up. I'm sure you get some prop bet action on there too if you're a golf guy. I'm not a golf guy. The closest thing I get to a tee is this tee right here on my chesticle. So check them out. PrizePicks, promo code NERDS. And not only that, you get some action. You get a free nerd shirt, which is the best shirt in the world. And that is 100% proven because everyone we sent to, which is over 2,000 people, they've all said, oh my gosh, you weren't lying. That is the most comfortable shirt in the world.
in the world.
And then right now, what is that promo code? Rookie. Singular. We're doing a big
Former recording artist Jared Wackerly over there.
Rookie.
Mine.
for the podcast listeners only. It's only valid for them and the YouTube watchers. If you use the promo code rookie on Dynasty Nerds right now, you're going to save 15% off any kind of membership. So if you want the film room, you want the Dynasty GM, you want the Nerd Score, which just got dropped,
which we just
today.
launched. Yeah, we just launched. The running backs are out. The wide receivers, it'll still be another week or so until the wide receivers come out. But yeah, all the running backs are on there. Still might get slight tweaks potentially up until the NFL draft. Then once the NFL draft happens, or before the draft happens that night, it locks. So whatever it's in there, it stays that way. So that way there's good accountability.
Does it really lock?
It really does.
You're a tinkerer, and you've
am
said
a tinkerer.
You've said it a bunch.
I tinker up until that. However, if it wasn't, I would have definitely raised my Justin Jefferson and my Chase Claypool grades.
And you can't now.
And it's too late, and they live there forever, unfortunately.
His contested ball scores a little low. Like, okay.
Hey, how's CEH doing?
Huh?
What?
Who?
Huh? Go ahead.
What? Why'd you point at me?
Yeah. I honestly didn't hear
Because he couldn't point at Rich to tell him to go ahead. And
Shout out to David Zach for running his analytical model or regression analysis against our Nerd Score. We actually outperformed Draft Capital last year.
Yeah.
So it was more predictive of Draft Capital for fantasy success. So maybe you guys can find some
good
diamonds
gems.
in the rough.
Diamonds.
Like this is just something we do, something to do to help you listeners and viewers. Like it's legit. All the information we just want to put out there, all the tools we put out there is to make sure that your dynasty team is in the best position to win a dynasty fantasy football championship. I mean, what else? Why? There's no other reason we do this.
That's it, man.
8 years straight. Come on, waste my time around here trying to win some championships. So today we're talking dynasty fantasy football rookies 2022. We're gonna kick off the first show right now. And I'll tell you what, out of the 12 guys we're going to talk about today and this show and the Nerd Herd show is, I came away pleasantly surprised. Where I came away unpleasantly surprised with some of those running backs, I came away pleasantly surprised with some of these receivers. Let's just get right into it, shall we?
Let's do it.
Let's start off with Garrett Wilson, wide receiver out of Ohio State. 6 foot, 183 pounds, going to be 22 in 1 month when the season kicks off. Finished the year last year with 70 catches, 1,058 yards, and 12 touchdowns. But, he came in right away as a freshman and produced as well. He looked pretty good there. 30 catches, 432 yards, 5 touchdowns. Followed up with 43 catches, 723 yards, and 6 touchdowns. But always looked good. Was the number 1 high school recruit coming out that year. When he go to Ohio State, he was the number 1 high school receiver coming out. At the combine, he had 4.3840, a 36-inch vertical, 123-inch broad jump, a 4.36 short 20-yard shuttle. This is a guy who played 30% of the slot last year, ran 73.1% of his routes from the slot in 2020 as well. So he was a slot receiver there amongst all those receivers. Guy who has really good hands. Garrett Wilson only has 6 career drops, and he's somebody that when he gets in space, he's electric, right? Like he might, at the time you're like he might not be the fastest guy, but then he was a super fast guy. But this is somebody who can get up, get the football, who's electric in space. And talking about get up, he can really get up. Once he gets the ball in his hands, that's where he does his damage.
There's a Viagra joke in there that I couldn't suppress.
Subtly in your mind.
I couldn't suppress my smiling anymore. But yeah, sorry.
So
go ahead.
I mean, he has those quick feet. He explodes when he gets the ball in his hands. He has good vision. He stacks his defenders really well. He's somebody that can just plant his foot and go. Continue to show that he has pretty good burst. Just an overall really safe prospect of what he shows on film. I mean, we're looking at cons of Garrett Wilson. The only thing I was really concerned is he's a little thinner, about 183 pounds there. A little trouble sometimes versus the press, but even in today's NFL, you see a little bit less of that. But sometimes at the up close, you're a little physical with them. That's about it. That's the only thing I could really come up with. I'm interested what you guys can say on this, because when I looked at Garrett Wilson, he's definitely in contention to be the number 1 overall receiver in my rookie rankings. We're going to talk about another guy who I have really close here as well, and I obviously haven't dug super deep into Jameson Williams or Drake London yet. Yeah. And I know you have a surprise guy we're going to talk about later.
I actually have him third. I thought he was second. He's actually third.
But Garrett Wilson is going to be the first wide receiver taken off in many dynasty rookie drafts this year. A very safe, is as safe as Breece Hall is at running back. Garrett Wilson's safe at receiver. Somebody who can offer wide receiver 1 upside. My gut instinct says, even though as much as I like Garrett Wilson, I could definitely see him hovering around, and this is not a slight, but, wide receiver 14 to 17, year in, year out. Like a high-end wide receiver, too, when it comes to Dynasty Fantasy Football, which, again, that's not a bad thing. You got to remember there's only 36 wide receiver 1s, 2, 3. And there's only 32 NFL teams. So when you think about it, when you got guys that are wide receiver 1s on the same team, it's like, oh, snap. You know what I mean? It's pretty incredible. So I like Garrett Wilson a lot. And I have no problem taking him as my first wide receiver. I think there is maybe one or two more receivers that offer potential more upside than him when it comes to a Dynasty Fantasy Football player. But when it comes to safety, and sometimes when you're picking that high, you just want to get somebody that you know are going to give you high-end numbers year in and year out. So when I say wide receiver 14, that's Robert Woods on a year-in, year-out basis, which is a championship caliber player with the potential to still be that wide receiver 1. Matt, what do you think of Garrett Wilson of Ohio State?
No, I really do like him. I think he has good suddenness. He wins at all levels of the defense. He can get you downfield. He can get you on posts, in cutting routes. Stuff coming back to the quarterback. He can beat you on little screen passes, little drag routes that he can take to the house. So I think he wins in a lot of different ways, which is obviously something you really, really want. And, he's a pretty good route runner. I wouldn't say he's exceptional in that area, but combined, the fact that he's a good route runner with his explosion and his speed, and he gets separation. So, to me, that's somebody that has room to grow in that area and actually get better at the NFL, which is something I like. So Garrett Wilson, I do think he's my number one guy right now. He's the only guy in my first tier of wide receivers that I've watched so far in depth. So right now he's kind of living alone in that stratosphere as far as my rankings. But I like you said, I've got plenty of tape to go through, and we have all these people that we're going to be going over next week and the week after. Right. So there might be somebody else that lands there. Obviously, Jameson Williams is the guy I think comes to mind for me that has the probably a little bit higher upside, and that could potentially be in that spot as well with him. Right off the bat, but I still have a long way to go for his tape study.
And we have to think about too. I mean, there's certain teams at the top of this draft, like the Jets, that are desperately trying to add a receiver, right? So if Garrett Wilson's one of the first receivers off the board and he goes to the Jets per se, we know the Green Bay Packers and the Kansas City Chiefs pretty much. Now, no, we don't know anything for a fact, but odds are pretty damn high that they're going to take a receiver in the first round. Yeah. Definitely the Chiefs with multiple picks. So all of a sudden you flip it, and a guy like Jameson Williams.
Don't the Packers have multiple picks this year also in the first round?
Yes, because of Devontae Adams. So they both
have
multiple picks. So the fact that Garrett Wilson goes, say, to the Jets, and then all of a sudden we slip down and Jameson Williams goes to the Chiefs and Treylon Burks goes to the Packers, that's going to switch some people's eyes where these players end up. And that's what I'm saying. Like, for me, we're talking about Treylon Burks in the second episode. He'll be the first player we're talking in the Nerd episode. And I'm saying right now, him and Garrett Wilson, where Garrett Wilson's super safe, Treylon Burks offers that Dynasty Fantasy Football upside, I think, higher than Garrett Wilson. And those are the things that we'll have to struggle with. And for me, it'll come down to as simple as, wow, Garrett Wilson's on the Jets and Treylon Burks is on the Packers. That's an easy little bit of a nudge that I can see with Aaron Rodgers for 3 years to turn him into that Devontae
We've made
Adams.
these mistakes before, though, Richard.
We have, and I'm going to continue making those mistakes down the road. But these two prospects are really close. We're not talking about taking Clyde Edwards-Helaire, our clear number 4 running back, and moving the number 1. We all did that. Right. We're not going to make that mistake. Garrett,
we all did that.
We'll talk about him when we kick off the next show. Treylon Burks compared to Garrett Wilson, because I would like to see where we differ on this. Because you said he's a clear cut number 1, and that's where I struggle right now. Garrett Wilson, who I thought would be a clear-cut number 1, after I dug even deeper into Treylon Burks, it's not so clear-cut for me, and I'll explain why in the next episode. What do you think of Garrett Wilson, Garrett?
I
love his first name.
Yes. Great first name. Highly intelligent, clearly. I'm with Matt. He is my clear-cut number 1. And I say clear-cut because there's no chance of anybody, in my mind, passing him before draft capital, but it's not to say that second tier is way far behind them. It's a very, very solid second tier. I just don't see anybody passing Garrett Wilson at this point for me. I like to see guys that produce early and then continue to progress throughout their career, and that's exactly what he did at Ohio State. Came in, had about 500 yards, 4 touchdowns as a true freshman, And that's tough to do, especially at Ohio State with all the great receivers that have been coming through, all the great high recruits that they get, to be able to produce that early. But then he just got better and better every season. We saw him progress in that sense. And I currently have him, this is my personal score, this isn't the overall nerd score. I personally have him at a 79.4. So in the 3 years that we've been doing the nerd score tape scores of my personal scores, the only 2 receivers so far that have had a higher score for me have been Chase and Devontae Smith. Those are the only 2 that have higher. And the one that's just a hair, like decimal points behind him, is CeeDee Lamb. So he's right there for me in that tier of those elite receivers, some of the best receivers in the draft, guys that you would expect to be top 15 type picks. And so that's what I expect for him. I do think he'll be a top 15 pick. I think one of the things that I really just gravitate towards with Garrett Wilson is he always has a plan, and he's never out of control. It seems like everything, he just lets the game come to him. And so I think that's what I really like. You see him do well, not just against man, but against zone. He understands the differences of what the defenses are going to do. So I just don't see a scenario where he ends up being Jalen Reagor. I just don't see a situation where he ends up being like one of these guys who are like had so much hype and so much potential and just fell flat on his face. I think he's one of the safest receiver prospects that we've had in quite some time.
Which says a lot, because again, at the top of the draft, that's what you're looking for. And I agree with that 100%. Like, this is a safe prospect. Worst case scenario is a wide receiver 2, like low end wide receiver 2, which is still, and that's a home run threat in a rookie pick that you get somebody to start year in, year out for the next 10 years. So that's what Garrett Wilson offers your Dynasty fantasy football. And that's why he probably will be the number 1 receiver taken, just because of that safety net. Now, again, we say that, but with how many of these teams that need receivers, somebody's going to get a little bit antsy out there. Jared, you got any thing you want to chime in on there?
You know, going fourth on these, it's like you guys pretty much hit on everything, so I don't have too much more to add. I'll just say, like, from a quarterback standpoint, he's a quarterback's best friend just due to his fantastic body control that he possesses. Like, you can throw it anywhere and trust that he's going to be able to contort his body and make the catch. His catch radius is huge. So I love that. You can line him up inside. You can line him up outside. He did both at Ohio State. So from a coaching perspective, you love that. You love the flexibility that he's going to give an offense, especially in today's offenses where they're moving guys around constantly. He beats press. He has a really good press beating. He has a really good package off the line of scrimmage. He runs great routes, so he's good after the catch. He's my highest graded wide receiver. He's my wide receiver 1 right now. I won't say that he's alone in that top tier. I have Jameson Williams up there as well. Spoiler alert. But no, I think he's extremely safe. And when we say safe, it's not like he doesn't offer a ton of upside either.
Yeah,
I mean, he's
I did want to mention that.
Yeah, I think he just has like a higher floor than say a Treylon Burks. But I also agree. I think Treylon Burks, his profile athletically and his physical profile just offers you possibly a little more.
Well, one thing that I know you and I talked about that I didn't mention, I was wondering if you were going to mention, the only knock that I personally had, and I know this was something that you shared as well, Garrett Wilson's not as physical as you would like him to be at times.
I agree. That's his lowest graded trait that we had in our nerd score.
Yep.
I'd like to see him fill out a little more and become a little more physical. But, yeah, when people test his physicality or get up in his space, he struggles a little bit. I agree.
That's the only thing I could find that I didn't like come away like, oh, sometimes you got to be like nuanced. I'm like, what don't I like about this guy? Definitely a prospect like Garrett Wilson, who is so good at playing the position. Yep. And that's why I said, and again, when I say, I see him at wide receiver 14, the 16 on a year in, year out basis, it's not a bad thing, because you still right now got to compete with guys like Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Tyreek Hill.
And that's not to say he couldn't have a wide receiver 5 overall season at some point or something like that.
For sure.
That's just saying that's kind of what we expect his typical range of outcomes to be.
And he, like you mentioned earlier, like he produced at Ohio State he's literally one of the reasons that shoved Jameson Williams out of Ohio State room. Right. I mean, he was in a wide receiver room with Paris Campbell, Terry McLaurin, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Jameson Williams, Chris Olave. You know, these are guys that were all pretty. Jackson Smith and Jigba will be probably the number 1 receiver off the board next year. Probably a high NFL draft pick. Terry McLaurin, a high second NFL, Terry McLaurin, third round pick. But now shown really well. Paris Campbell, a second-round pick at the NFL draft. So he was in a really good room. Ohio State is starting to pump these receivers out. And right now he left a room of Jackson Smith and Jigba and Marvin Harrison Jr. So and he always produced.
Shout out to Canton, Ohio's finest, Brian Hartland, on training those guys up.
How is he not a head coach somewhere?
He will be soon. They promoted him to something this year. They gave him a bigger title.
Yeah, like you are even better with the receivers as the receiver.
Yeah, he's
coach.
killing it.
But I think he also likes his job.
He does.
Like,
he does a good job with it.
That's what he
does a
wants
very
to
good
do.
job. Yep.
He attracts the best receivers in the country.
He does.
Yeah.
He does.
All right, moving on to our next receiver. Garrett Wilson because of the first name. I love this guy's last name.
Hey.
Jahan Dotson, wide receiver out of Penn State. Coming off a year we caught 91 balls for 1,182 yards and 12 touchdowns. 5'11", 178 pounds. Will be 22 and a half when the year kicks off. Coming off a pretty productive year last year, but even in 2020 had some really good numbers. Combine, pretty solid. 4.4340. 36-inch vertical, 121-inch broad jump, a 7.28 three-cone. That got me not too great. Put that in bold letters.
All the three cones were low this year, though. Only 2 got below a 6.
Only 2 got below
It
a 6.
was a weird year for the three cone. You're right.
But it's still a 7.28, and I don't like that. But you're talking about like reliable hands. This is a guy who has reliable hands. Caught 91% of his catchable balls. Only had 2 drops. Played outside.
He makes fantastic all around. Like he probably has some of the best hands we've seen. I just wanted to like kind of underline that and say it.
9.5 out of 10 for me.
Yeah,
the highest grade in the class.
Yeah, just watch the 2 catches he had back to back versus Ohio State. The one in coverage where he contorts his body and turns around, and then the one-handed snag for the touchdown. Probably one of the best catches you're going to see. I mean,
that was in the
Burks
2020 game, right?
2020. It wasn't 2021.
Yeah, it was 20.
Yep. So
this is 2019, I think. No, it's 2020.
That was 2020.
So in 2020 and 2019, he played mostly outside. But in 2021, he moved into the slot. And where he was playing on the outside, he played in the slot a little bit more in 2021. So he's playing inside and outside. And he's somebody that actually was more effective when he moved in last year to the slot. Somebody who gets off the line really well, uses good technique. His quickness is where he gets his separation from. And he's somebody like, again, where maybe this comes a little bit off the 3-cone, where Garrett Wilson's a little bit more dynamic out there. It's Jahan Dotson wins with his feet, his suddenness, his quickness. He varies his speeds pretty well.
They're very similar, right? Body style. I mean, Jahan Dotson is a little bit shorter, a little bit skinnier, but like proportionately, they're pretty much around the same size, right? I mean, just a little bit smaller, a little bit lighter. I feel like Jahan Dotson, I like a lot about what he does. But watching these 2 players back to back, and that's how I did it. I came away like, he's really good at this. He's just not quite as good as Garrett Wilson at.
Sure.
And it's hard to not compare the 2 when you're watching them back to back because they do a lot of the same stuff. They're on a lot of the same kind of routes.
I'll tell you the bigger difference right now between the 2. It's them in the open field.
That is correct. I was going to say that when you boil it down, they do a lot of the same things, but Garrett Wilson is more explosive after the catch, and I think that's kind of where you differentiate the 2 of these guys. Yep. And that was my bottom line. I was like, these 2 are very similar, but he's just kind of like the light version of Garrett Wilson when it comes to run after the catch, and maybe just everything. He's just he's a titch slower. He's a titch smaller. He's a titch less explosive, and he's not quite as good after the catch. So that's kind of how I see these 2 wide receivers stacking up, and it's not like I don't want to say that he's bad. I don't want people to think of him as being bad because
he's good.
Yeah, he's very good. He's right now he's gonna be probably in that 3rd to 4th wide receiver in my rankings type of range.
Yeah, I have him right around like 5 or in this 5-6 range, and because when you look at the positives, when you just strictly look at the positives, Jahan Dotson, there's a lot to like. But like, it's good that I watched him like in depth right after Garrett Wilson. Like I felt really good. I'm glad that you stacked him that way because being able to watch those guys back to back, and the difference is again, in the open field, drastically different. I saw a lot of one-arm tackles on Jahan Dotson. He was like way easier to bring down. And where Garrett Wilson's like this really good, explosive player, you see a little bit less of that athleticism Dotson out there in open field. And a lot of those, what he showed at the combine, that came into fruition. I mean, this is somebody where you can look at Garrett Wilson like this is a good athlete out there. Jahan Dotson's not that like elite athlete. And some of his numbers here at the combine with the broad jump, with his 3-cone, it kind of showed a little bit here when he gets in that open field where he's not going to win the same way. His arms aren't as long. I think his arm right here is his wingspan is in a smaller percentile when it comes to a wingspan. Where Garrett Wilson, like Jared said, he's going to win anywhere near that ball is around him. Right, he's going to go up and get it. Where Dotson has the really good hands, the radius isn't as expansive as a guy like Garrett Wilson. Sure. So to me, when I'm looking at the prospects of a dynasty player, to me it's Garrett Wilson easily over Jahan Dotson.
No, I agree. It's not hard to figure out who's better. But I just didn't want it to make it. I didn't want it to sound like I don't like him as a player, because I do like him as a player. I think obviously he suffered probably from worse quarterback play as well. So
definitely,
I would have.
Clifford is bad.
Yeah,
worse than the Big Ten history.
Right. So I would have liked to have seen him with a better quarterback to see if maybe he was getting slightly better balls thrown to him. If he could maybe do a little bit more after the catch as well.
I'm glad if he goes to KC with Pat Mahomes, like, that's a good spot.
Absolutely.
And now we're gonna let Garrett get into him. And I kind of like pushing aside a little bit because you have a lot to say because you love Jahan Dotson.
I do.
You came in here glowing about him. So
I was surprised a little bit too because I try my best going into prospects to like clear my mind of everything I know about the guy and everything, and I had seen a little bit and I was just whelmed. I wasn't like overly excited or anything like that, but also, and I use that as a regular word in my life.
Whelmed.
Yes. But on top of that, anytime a guy comes back for his senior year, I was like, but why? But why? Why did you do that? So that's always kind of sticks in my mind, although we've seen a lot of really good guys lately that did go back for their senior year. So it's starting to be disproven a little bit. Cooper Kupp was a senior. Debo Samuel was a senior. Terry McLaurin. Like, there's a lot of very good receivers that have gone back for their senior year. Chris Olave, a guy that we'll get to next week, which I'm excited to cover him as well.
Especially this year, it's a very weird, you know what I mean, as far as the COVID timing and all that kind of stuff.
Because you'll have guys that are juniors that it's like their 5th year. It's like, how are you a junior?
Oh, we have one guy coming into a 7th year we're going to talk about. So
so it's weird. But all of that being said,
Old Man River.
I started watching his tape and Clifford is definitely not a good quarterback. And I think that was something that even made me like Jahan Dotson more because he had the best hands in the class, I think, bar none. That was his best attribute, and there was nobody in the class who was better, especially considering how frequently passes would be thrown behind him, would be underthrown, would be overthrown. Like, it was very rare for him to catch a ball in stride. It just did not happen frequently. And I think that's part of the yards after catch thing as well, is it's a lot easier to run and go when you're still at full speed, as opposed to having to stop, catch it, and then try to break tackles and things like that. So I still think Garrett Wilson's better after the catch. I have him, an 8 versus a 6.5. So I definitely think that Garrett Wilson's better there. But those are the types of things that I wonder, like, would he be better in those areas had he had more, better passes thrown his way? But overall, the overall profile is really good. I was also pleasantly surprised at how well he did in contested catch situations, despite being a smaller receiver. He's not a guy that you would think of as, the 6'1", 6'2", go up and get it. But he didn't have any issues with when there was DBs on him. He could go up and get the ball. It wasn't.
He's a guy that trusts his hands, and again, those kind of guys, usually are good in those kind of situations because they can just out-muscle defenders.
And he is 5'11". It's not like he's like a shorter
receiver.
He's
not like 5'9". He's just very average height when it comes to it. But I was saying this, and I don't know that this is like my favorite comp ever, but if you were to make Elijah Moore a little bit slower and a little bit better at contested catches, I think that's kind of what we have here with Jahan Dotson. I see them similarly. It's just one's got a little more juice and the other one's a little bit better as the contested catches. But I have them graded as far as their nerd score grade as pure prospects. Pretty close. Elijah Moore had a slightly better score, but very close.
I thought Elijah Moore, the way he was able to get the ball was a little bit better than Jahan Dotson. Him with the ball in his hands, to me, again,
sure.
It's like I'm watching two different players.
Well, and I think that was the speed. That's why I was saying quicker but slightly better with his hands
I think
or contested catch.
going back to Elijah, I think he's better side to side. I think that's where I differentiate the two of them in my brain anyway, with the ball in their hands.
Real excited for Elijah Moore this year.
Yeah, me too.
Like, real excited. Jared, you got anything to throw on top of Jahan Dotson, best last name in the game?
Yeah, my only worry with Dotson is like for his frame.
Yeah.
When DBs get hands on, he seems to like stop a little bit. So I'm a little worried with his overall physicality. But as far as going up and getting the ball, I mean, he's right up there with Garrett Wilson, like you said. And it's funny, Matt, you said he's like Garrett Wilson light. So I was looking through my nerd score and just comparing him and Garrett Wilson. He's just like a fraction lower on pretty much every category.
Yep.
Aside from hands, I have Dotson as the best hands in the class.
And that's exactly dead on. That's
Yeah.
the way I
and
see
literally
it
what
anyway.
you read,
Yep.
and I didn't even read out mine, which is funny. For my biggest worry about Jahan Dotson, I wrote, will his overall size and physicality be his Achilles heel at the NFL level? Like, you know, and then being able to come down so easy. Those are my only two concerns here. Were like big and bold, where like his size and physicality. Like it's just that's because that's the difference between being a wide receiver 3 at the next level and being a high end wide receiver 2. It's literally that simple. Where you catch the football. I mean, you want to be Austin Hooper, get the football and just fall down? Is that what you want to do? Because that's not going to translate to fantasy football points.
Did you just comp Dotson to Hooper?
He offers much more after the catch than Hooper. Come
Much
on.
more. You know what I mean? But like that's
Jamar
just mean.
Chase.
That dynamic. I mean, again, when we're looking at these players, right? Like we have to be that nuanced with them because these are the difference between this pick and that pick. So when you say I like Jahan Dotson over Jameson Williams, that's the difference. If some people
Who said that?
Nobody yet. What I'm
All
going to
right.
say, like when we do this show, and everybody that listens, like,
Fight
hey,
you.
I respect Matt's opinion on this player more than you. I respect Rich's opinion. I respect Garrett's opinion. So when we tell these people,
You had it right first.
you know what I mean? I like Jahan Dotson over them. I mean, it's the difference between having that player on your roster for the next 10 years and the difference between, you know, having an okay player and a dynamic player. So when there's concerns like that, I'm going to start looking for players that are outside it. So for me, it's why I would push Jahan Dotson down to that 9-ish range in my first round, probably right around there. You know, anywhere from 8 to 12. I want to see what these guys
9-ish in a
play.
startup, you mean?
I think that's where he lives.
9-ish in a startup.
Overall, yeah.
I think that's where he lives.
Yeah, and that's where he's showing so
Yeah.
far in mock drafts. And like I said, things are going to change this year with how close these guys and how the subtle things are different. Because again, Jahan Dotson.
Second round pick in the NFL draft.
Oh, I think so.
I've
think
heard
so,
some
too.
rumor. I've heard some rumors end of the first, but I think he's pretty locked in as a top 50 guy.
Yeah, I think so.
And the facts are, no matter what, some of these guys are close enough and good enough. If you take one of these guys like Jahan Dotson, and you pair him up with a guy like Pat Mahomes, who can move outside the pocket and make things happen and put the ball where Jahan Dotson needs the football anyways, and also put him in position to succeed after the catch, that does mean something at the next level. When having a guy like Aaron Rodgers throwing you the football, and then there's no other receivers even around you but you to come in as a rookie, to have, you know, McCole Hardman as a number, or I'm sorry, Juju Smith-Schuster, who's your computer, who's on a 1-year deal. That does speak something for the Dynasty community when you have a guy like not as much Aaron Rodgers on a 3-year deal, but Pat Mahomes on a 10-year deal, and you take you take him in the first round. That does enough for me to give somebody like Dotson maybe a slight bump.
Did you just
Dotson.
mispronounce your own last name?
Jahan Dotson. He put them together. Dotson.
Dotson.
New guy, new name. Yeah.
I think he could offer some upside in punt return too, because he did that at Penn State. So
There's a
some
couple guys
special
out here that
teams
played some
built.
good special teams that we're going to talk about today.
Yep.
All right, let's move on to our next receiver. John Metchie, wide receiver out of Alabama, coming off a really productive year. 96 catches, 1,142 yards, 8 touchdowns. He's 5'11", which kind of like took me by surprise. I had to double check that. Like specifically,
Taller than you thought, or
Huh?
smaller than you thought?
taller.
Okay,
Because I thought he was smaller. Like when I was watching the Alabama versus LSU. Now, kudos to LSU with all those big defensive backs. I thought he was like 5'6". Like watching versus LSU, because those defensive backs are like so much taller than him versus that game. Because that's the first game I watched. I'm like, oh, he's a little bit smaller. And then I double checked. I was like, no, he's 5'11". Like, how big are those backs at LSU? Sweet baby Jesus.
Stingley.
5'11", 187 pounds. Going to be 22 years old in 1 month when the season kicks off. Didn't run any of the combine numbers because
coming off an ACL.
tore his ACL.
Yep.
So
it was an SEC championship game, right?
SEC championship. It's where he tore it in December.
Georgia. First game against.
Played about little under half it. 47% of his routes were from the slot. That's where he lined up. And this is somebody who has a really good route runner, which is usually always translates to me to fantasy points. When I see guys like John Metchie, who the way he runs his routes, it's like, okay, Hunter Renfrow, you mentioned his name earlier. Like those guys win, and they can produce, and they can put up wide receiver 1 numbers occasionally, like Hunter Renfrow did this year. He gets out of his breaks really, really well. Quick feet, smooth in space. Still probably going to be a slot guy at the NFL level too. That means way less these days because those guys actually succeed. Plays pretty physical, plays tough. Like that out of him. Obviously, some cons here. Tore his ACL in December. Not super fast. So it would have been nice to see his 40 time because like he does.
I would be very interested to see. I think he's probably a 4-4 guy. He's definitely not a 4-3 guy.
No,
I
would say he's probably mid to high 4.4s.
Yeah,
I guess like 4 or 5.
Which is fast, but not like super fast. You know what I mean? Like it for a guy his size, it's good speed. I think he gets up to top speed quickly on film, which is something I like. And this is a team that they had Jamison Williams to take the lid off the defense. You know what I mean? He was like the downfield guy. I think Metchie worked the underneath stuff pretty good and was still able to get downfield. Sure. It's not like he's incapable, but they have Jamison Williams. He was just better at it, so I think he was used more in that capacity. But John Metchie, he's another wide receiver that I think profiles similar to Garrett Wilson, similar to Jahan Dotson. These are guys that are probably best in the slot, but they can play out wide, so they do have some versatility. He can do a little bit after the catch. He's not as good as either one of those other guys after the catch.
So this is actually I read. So when I do my scouting and I'm watching film and I'm taking notes, and then I'll go back and read some scouting reports of people that I appreciate. And I read like 3 scouting reports of saying like guys I respect a ton and that are successful in this business. All 3 of them were like John Metchie, really good run after the catch, really good. I'm like, did I miss something? I went back and I was like, I don't see him like being tremendous after run after the catch.
He's not tremendous. I think he's okay. I think he can.
I thought he was okay at best.
I had him slightly above average.
Yeah, I think he's okay. I think he can do a little something here and there, but he's not like.
Then I'm missing something because after I saw that report, I literally went back and watched more tape to see if I was like, did I miss that? Because like I don't
have him like elite numbers, but I have him slightly above average.
7.5.
That's what I have.
What's the average? 6.5.
6 is average.
That's my nerd score. 6.5.
I think he makes people miss, and he runs pretty physically out in the open field, and he's got speed.
No, he runs physical, but it just I didn't see like the run after the catch that there's big plays after the catch. Sure. I just didn't see it, and I watched at least 5 games of John Metchie, so maybe it's the other 6 games that I missed.
Well, I watched the LSU game as well. I watched A&M. I'm trying to think of both those. Georgia. The first one.
Mississippi State.
And I don't see the Garrett Wilson closest with him either. Now it sounds like I'm starting to poop on him a little bit because, dude, I mean, his contested catches were like subpar. Like some of his timing was a little off there. He dropped some easy balls at times, so his hands were like okay.
He has the worst score for hands in the class for me.
Yeah, I mean, I thought his hands were just okay. Like he dropped some easy. There's another player we're gonna talk about. Like he dropped some.
Christian Watson has the lowest for me right now.
Okay.
So he dropped some easy balls at times for me. So that was a concern. My overall feel about John Metchie, then Gary, you get into it, was he's one of those guys that's really QB friendly. Like he's somebody that in the right offense, he's the number 2 guy, and he sees the targets. Like if the targets are there, he's going to produce fantasy points, which it's easy to say about any player, but I feel really confident about him being able to get open,
I
produce, and being a wide receiver 3.
He runs good enough routes. He's coming from a pro-style offense, and I think he knows how to get open. I think that's what you're kind of trying to say. And
Jarvis Landry?
He's got, I think,
Jarvis Landry has much better hands.
I think he's got more juice than Jarvis.
No pun intended.
No pun intended. In his legs, but yeah, like you said, he's not as good at
and most people weren't.
Yeah.
I mean, Jarvis set an NFL record for catches in his first 7 years in the league. So,
yeah.
What do you think of? I mean, obviously, you say he has the worst hand grade
for me right now, and part of that is
there's a couple guys.
That's part of that is his ability to just catch the ball flat out, but part of that is also I also factor in like spectacular catches, like can he make like the over and above catch?
And
I literally did not see a single catch that was like oh man, nice hands on that catch. Like it was He caught the ones he was supposed to catch, but then often he wouldn't even do that.
Some body catches too.
Versus Texas A&M, PFF had him with 3 drops just in that game alone. He had 2 more against LSU, and that was maybe being generous because there were 2 or 3 against LSU that weren't drops, but Jameson Williams would have caught him. Garrett Wilson would have caught him.
Yeah.
Jahan Dotson would have caught him. So I think that's the thing here is we're talking about an okay athlete that isn't great in contested catch situations, doesn't have great hands, can do a little bit after the catch and is decently quick. So I'm underwhelmed with him. I think he's going to do okay draft capital wise just from being from Alabama and decent name under Nick Saban, but I think he's a little overvalued to me.
I think he's a mid-second round pick that's
for Dynasty.
That's kind of like, I think there's some safety that comes along with him. Like, because I think he's somebody who's going to be in the NFL. He's going to be around for a while, but I feel like he's.
There's not a ton of ceiling.
You're not starting him many times there. And for me, where he's going to be going, like, I would rather gamble on a guy we're going to talk about next. Who we're going to, I mean, like,
sure.
I'd rather take that upside of him. But I do think there's some safety with, like, Metchie in the right offense. Like, I'm intrigued about where he goes. You know what I mean? Because he does offer some safety because he's a very solid wide receiver, but nothing special about him.
I think he's a dime a dozen. I think there's plenty of John Metchies out there. He's lower percentile for height, weight, length. He doesn't go up and win at the catch point. I mean, he's just plug him in your slot, and I mean, he is what he is.
But there's a role for that in today's NFL though too. That's
There's
where
plenty of guys that can do the same thing.
there is, but in the right offense, if he's the guy doing that thing, then he's going to produce fantasy football points.
Yeah.
So that's the intriguing part about him. Like, he's a safety net there. You're right. There's a lot of guys like him out there, but I think his profile, like Garrett said, coming from Alabama, being a Saban guy, it's going to boost him up a little bit because he is playing amongst the best of the best.
Yep.
You know, so I think that does help. So, and that's where I think like he does offer a little bit of a safety net in a mid-second round. Like, if you're like, oh, I don't know who to take, and you don't want to really risk it for the biscuit, I think Metchie's an okay pick. Me personally, I would rather get a guy like Metchie in the 3rd round, than the second round.
And I think that's the reason I probably won't have him anywhere, because I agree. I think he's like a safer prospect, but after I get into the 2nd round, all I care about is ceiling, and I just don't think he has it at that point. And so I just don't think I'm going to end up with him many places, because best case scenario, I see him as like wide receiver 32. Which is fine.
It's startable.
But that's best case scenario. And like, if that's your ceiling,
but it seems like you're right. The 2nd round, like, oh, there's no way. But like, you're at pick 3-3 and Metchie's on the board. Like, oh, okay, there's value there.
Sure.
Like,
I mean, at least you won't miss potentially. But
I mean, I would take him for sure in the 3rd round. I'm thinking about it.
I just think
name
name-wise, I think he's gone before that.
Yeah.
So there's other receivers here, like you mentioned, upside, that I feel at the back end of that 2nd, if I'm a contender, like I'm going for that upside. And let's get to one of those guys here next. I'm really intrigued to hear you guys' opinions on this player. And that player is Alec Pierce, wide receiver, Cincinnati. Let's talk size. 6'3", 211 pounds. Ran a 4.41 40 at the combine, which is really fast for a guy his size. 40.5-inch vertical, the best amongst all wide receivers at this combine. 129-inch broad jump, a 7.13 3-cone, which
for his size
is really good.
And the fact that everyone else was running pretty high times, that's actually pretty good. Yeah.
A 4.28 20-yard shuttle.
And say his agility score is 30th percentile.
Yeah, so
based on those numbers, and
there's a lot to like there. Coming off a year, 52 catches, 884 yards, 8 touchdowns. Will be 22 years and 4 months when the NFL kicks off. This is somebody who's a real good deep ball guy. He's really good at tracking the ball, adjusting, really good body control. He continued routinely kind of high pointing the ball really, really well, and went up and got the ball. And he almost always came down with the football. Almost always. He's a jump ball stud, fast, athletic, physical, will go over the middle of the field, wins vertically a ton. I mean, that's him and Desmond Ridder. That was their go-to, kind of like a Christian Watson kind of esque there.
Sure.
But he was really good. One thing he did better that there, like he was good at varying his speed on his vertical routes, which I thought was pretty nice. Really good in the red zone. really good hands I came away with. And I get to see today's NFL game, like that working for him. Like that could work in today's game where it's QB friendly. Smart player too. I saw graduated in mechanical engineering in 3.5 years. I put that in notes. That was a little impressive nugget I saw on him. Some of the cons, not the best at getting off the line. You know, for a guy his size, sometimes you could see that. His route running is average. He's more, but again, he was more just a linear guy.
I think he has good movement skills to kind of improve in that area. But yeah, I mean, it was he had pretty basic. It was a go route, it was a post, it was a comeback, and it was an in cut. That was really all I saw on tape. Like those 4 things was kind of like the main gist of what he was doing. But he's a go up and get it type of guy, right? Like if you have the right kind of quarterback that's willing to throw to a big, tall wide receiver that isn't necessarily open, he can come down with him most of the time. Most of the time. I did see a couple times when the DBs got a little bit physical and knocked the balls out of his hand. But I think you're gonna live with that kind of result. You know what I mean? To have a guy that you can kind of just chuck it up to in the corner of the end zone. I mean, is he body style wise? Is he a Cortland Sutton type? Is he a Chase Claypool? Yeah, I mean those are the type of wide receivers that are go down the field, kind of throw it up to him guys. He's probably closer to a Donovan Peoples-Jones, I would say, as far as skills, which isn't to say a bad thing, but that's kind of where I see him landing. A guy that you can get the ball to in intermediate stuff. You could throw it down the field. You can jump ball it to him. I don't know that he's gonna right away come into the league and be one of these guys that produces. I think this is a guy that's going to take a few years to kind of get into the NFL groove and maybe have a rapport with a quarterback to kind of build that trust to be that guy that they're throwing the ball to. But I do like him. There is some upside there. He's not in my top tier or my second tier guys. He's kind of floating in between that bottom part of my third tier and the top part of my fourth tier. Sure. So there is definitely upside, and you just don't see a lot of people that are this big, this strong, and that can run that fast. So this is one of those like world theory type of things. There's only so many people in the world that can do this kind of stuff. So he's definitely a guy that catches your eye from that respect, and that I'd be willing to take a chance on because the upside is huge. And
I liked him more as I watched him too. That was the thing, because I think what you said about the contested catch where like he didn't come down with a couple, that was like the first game I watched. I'm like, oh, well, he's big, but he's like not that good. Then every game after that, he got, like I saw he was like a little better and a little better. He did a little bit more like each game I watched. I'm like, oh, I slowly started growing me a little bit more at a time. And my biggest fear with him, I think too, is one of the route running, because a guy of his size, which makes sense, like he does have to slow down a little bit getting out of his breaks. Like you see him have to kind of like slow it down a little bit. It's like, does he fall in that category that worries me of, is this a guy that helps an NFL team more than your dynasty team?
And that's
right? Which would be like a Donovan Peoples-Jones player.
And that's why I think he needs to have a quarterback that's willing to throw it up and has that kind of track record. Because if he doesn't have that kind of guy, he might fade into obscurity because he's just not going to get the proper amount of balls thrown his way.
Jared, you had a really interesting note. You and I were talking about him earlier today. Talk real quick about him coming out of high school.
Oh, yeah. So he was pretty under-recruited because he came from a very run-heavy offense in high school, so he didn't get a chance to shine. And Cincinnati kind of fell into him as I think there were some relationships there with the coaching staff of his high school in Cincinnati. I think they were one of the only teams to actually offer him. And most colleges saw him as a tight end coming into college, and Cincinnati said, no, we're gonna shape you into being a wide receiver. So you can kind of see that in his game. And I thought that was pretty cool. That was interesting.
Yeah, and I think you see that a little bit is he almost looks like a really athletic Y more so than a receiver. He looks like, a tight end that can do some good things across the middle of the field and stuff, but he's very stiff. And I think that's the thing I wonder about. I have him subpar release, subpar route running. There's really not much to be offered after the catch, unless it's like a big long play, down the field.
I think I wrote that down in my notes. The only thing he offers after the catch is if he's past the guy already,
right? Because of the speed,
and he's just going to keep running,
right? So he's not going to like make guys miss. Nope. He's not overly quick, but you're right. I mean, the size, the physicality, the body control, like all of those types of things are nice. So I think I've been scarred from my love for JJ Arcega-Whiteside. That I see.
He wasn't nearly the athlete.
He was not.
He wasn't.
I was going to say, he's not even close to the athlete.
But
all he could do was jump up and get the ball.
But that being said, I'm sure
he is a tight end now.
I'm sure J-Jaw would have better draft capital than this guy's going to have. I don't think this guy's going in the second round.
I don't think so.
That's the thing. I think when you look at a guy that really is just a jump ball specialist, and he has the deep threat ability too. Where's the separation? There's just not enough for me to really be overly interested. He didn't have a terrible score for me. He ended up with a 70.73. So
that's not bad.
It's not a terrible score. It's not a great score. It's just, like a fourth round kind of guy.
That's what upside will get you, though. I mean,
exactly.
I haven't scored him out for our nerd score yet, but that's what the speed will get you, and
exactly
all the athletic stuff that
you see. Obviously, the puzzle pieces all have to see where they fall into place here.
Correct.
But for me, when I look at him, I'm like, I would like him if I'm a contender. I like him in the back end of the second round as like a nice upside touchdown kind of guy because
if he lands in the right place,
if he lands in the right spot. But you mentioned before, like the wrong kind of quarterback situation, like he's in, Sam Darnold's throwing the football, or even a place like Miami with Tua Tagovailoa. Like, I don't want that kind of,
right.
We're looking for, a
Where's
Justin
Jay Cutler?
No, it would be a good spot.
A big R guy that's going to chuck it downfield no matter if you have 2 yards of separation or the guy's crawling on your back, he's going to throw it up and you're going to.
A good spot for him would be like he goes in the fourth round. He goes to L.A. to the Chargers with Justin Herbert. He sits behind. He learns from Mike Williams, learns from Keenan Allen a little bit. And then when Keenan Allen's ready to step back and say, like, after 2 years, that'd be a really good fit for him and a guy like Justin Herbert's arm.
To just chuck the ball.
Most mocks I'm doing right now, he's going like mid-third, early fourth round rookie drafts.
He's intriguing that way. Yeah. So he's going to be intriguing NFL teams. And that's the thing. Does he help an NFL team more than he helps your dynasty team?
And I think landing spot's going to depend a lot on that one.
Yeah, intrigued. Really he's definitely like on my board second round as of right now.
Would you pick him up on Prediction Strike?
I think he's got to be super cheap. So I feel like there's nowhere to go but up. He's a
Juice is worth the squeeze.
He's a 5-catch, 130-yard, 2-touchdown kind of guy. 1 week, it obviously goes from 1 penny to 12 cents, and I just made 120% profit. Is that right? Those right numbers?
You nailed it, man.
Woohoo!
Crushed it. Well, that's what you can do on PredictionStrike.com, especially come NFL draft time. All of these prospects that we're looking at, all the guys we're talking about, the best opportunity to get your hands on them will be during this NFL draft time, before they even step foot on the field, before preseason. Go ahead and get those guys. You buy, sell stocks of players just like you would in the stock market. Best of all, if you go to the Prediction Strike website or on the app, you can sign up with the promo code Dynasty and receive a free share of a player with your first deposit of $20 or more. That is promo code Dynasty over at PredictionStrike.com. All
right, let's get into our next receiver here. That I know Matt, him and I were talking the other day. He's like, I'm just in the middle watching this tape on Calvin Austin, wide receiver out of Memphis. Like, I like it. I'm liking what I'm seeing. I'm like, I haven't gotten there yet. Let me go check him out. I just watched him casual. I'm like, it's okay. 5'8", 170 pounds. Will be an older receiver when he comes in. He'll be 23 years old in 5 months when the NFL kicks off. Come off a really good year, 74 catches, 1,149 yards, and 8 touchdowns. But those numbers, 5'8", 170 pounds, the shortest and the lightest player at the combine altogether. On top of those receptions, he did have 8 carries for 3 touchdowns, and 2 touchdowns actually on 29 punt returns. Had the best short shuttle at the combine, 4.07. Ran a 4.32 40.
He had a ridiculous 3-cone as well, 6.65.
That is, I was getting it ridiculous. Whew. That's really, really. But when you're, when you can run under a mushroom, then you should be a lot quicker.
When you're mouse sized,
you can run under a mushroom.
Yeah. I mean, when you look at the 3 cones and you're eye to eye with the tip of the cone, like you should be able to get through those pretty easily. They're not.
Come on, man.
You're running against your peers there. His vertical 39 inches, broad jump really 135 inches. Matt said 3 cone 6.65. That 20-yard shuttle 4.07, best of his class.
39 inches on the vertical, so he's making up for some of that height.
He is.
Right?
He can get up, man.
And he showed that on tape. Like he showed that on tape. So he's very quick off the line. Very good versus press coverage. Small but plays tough. Fearless, not afraid to go over the middle. Real loose hips and quick feet, which showed with the short shuttle.
Yes.
There that like. And that's why you love the combine, because stuff like that translates to tape. Like you see the tape and then you read the combine numbers, like, that makes perfect sense. Like Kenneth Walker running 4.32 because how quick he gets to the outside edge and why he's so studly. Garrett knows. He dominated the Senior Bowl. Really good against separation.
Did you see any of the tape of him running against the DBs at the Senior Bowl? They do have that on
was
YouTube.
killing them.
They were. He was making them look
show.
silly.
Like, here's the DB. Here he is,
Silly.
and here he is.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, see you later.
Yeah.
You know?
He was sending postcards to those fools, man. Like, because he was on vacation and they were left at home.
So all that, like, dude, all that makes Calvin Austin, like, when you watch him, when he plays, like, this is exciting.
Mm-hmm.
But then, you know, because of his size, you can knock him around, you can knock him off his route. He's not winning any 50-50 balls most of the time.
He's got crazy hops. He's not a jump ball guy. You're
He's not a jump
You're
ball.
never going to throw him contested balls or anything like that. But the good news
It's
is
more just as if it's an overthrow over the middle.
Yeah.
He has a chance to get
yeah,
like
yeah.
it's that kind of.
the good news is he separates. So you're not going to have a lot of contested catch type of situations. The bad news is he's 5'8", 170 pounds.
Yeah,
and
you get a
no
pinky on him and you got him.
no one's ever done it at that size, right?
No. So here's a couple guys, right?
You listen. This is what I'm going to say. I do like him. It's going to be very hard. He's going to have to overcome crazy odds. He does have shades of Tyreek Hill in his game, right? Like, you never really can say that because no one is Tyreek Hill,
Like
but
shades on a dark day.
he has shades of it enough that
barely see it?
I had to at least go back and look
Matt,
how big Tyreek Hill was when he came into the league, exactly what his measurements were.
5'9".
There was, it was 5'9", about 178 pounds. So it's very comparable in size, but obviously Tyreek Hill has come a long way since then.
Sure.
So they're not, I mean, you can't compare Tyreek Hill now to Calvin Austin III. But all you can do is look at their starting points, and they're not leaps and bounds away from each other. And he does have a lot to overcome, being only 170 pounds and 5'8".
And that's so my biggest hang up on these kind of guys that are 5'8". I literally took time to look it up because I was interested too, and that's how I knew Tyreek Hill was 5'9". And it's like, okay, this guy has good tape. And there's another guy, Wan'Dale Robinson, we're gonna talk about. I was like, these guys are pretty solid, but they're 5'8". Like, has anybody ever been successful at 5'8" or lower in the NFL? And now obviously there's running backs like guys like Darren Sproles and things like that. But when it comes to receivers, it's Wes Welker, Cole Beasley, Jamison Crowder, and that's it. Like,
Short list.
That short list for short guys. And honestly, only one of those guys ever, and only one time, produced a high-end level, and that was Wes Welker back in 2011. We had 333.9 PPR points, which is top 17 all time, by the way. So
He also had 333 targets.
They got them all.
So, I
Got 'em
mean,
all.
again, I've said this many times when it comes to our podcast. Like, I look at this sometimes as playing Dynasty, it's like playing poker. And, like, what are my odds, right? What are the odds that this hand is going to win? And the hand could look good, but it's like a guy like Calvin Austin is like, you're starting out with a nice hand, but they're pocket twos, right? Like, you have a pair of twos in your hand. Like, oh, this is good. There's a chance this could win.
I've won on spots.
As long as nothing bigger comes along.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, to me, I like Calvin Austin. I think he's a really good college football player. I feel the same way about Wan'Dale Robinson. But for me, it's that upside. It's like you're looking for an outlier again. And when I'm looking for outliers, maybe I'll take him at the back end of the third, fourth. But even then, I'm probably gambling on some of these running backs or some upside tight ends at that point.
I remember getting
we'll get to that.
Tyreek pretty late in drafts.
Well, Matt,
But again, that's an outlier, though. But you took it. You hit. You're always going to hit on some of those guys. That's the same reason. I mean, Tom Brady going to the 6th round. I mean, the greatest quarterback of all time. Like, oh well, he's the next Tom Brady. Like, no, he's not. Same thing about Tyreek Hill. Like, he's the next Tyreek. There's no other Tyreek Hill.
I'm not trying to say that, but there are shades to his game that are similar as far as Tyreek Hill is not only fast.
They're also the same age.
He's explosive and he's powerful for his size, and he does everything, I think, in a powerful way, even just changing directions. And when I'm watching Calvin Austin III, I see shades of that, and it just reminded me of him. So it made me want to at least go investigate.
Yeah, when you see Tyreek Hill, he's thick. You know what I mean? When you see him, you're like, don't turn sideways. I'll lose you.
He wasn't always.
But I'm not far off from you, Matt, honestly, because one of the comps that I keep hearing over and over is like, well, he's Tutu Atwell. He's not Tutu Atwell.
Oh, no. Hell
And
no.
now, I know that he got second-round draft capital last year, but
156-pound Tutu Atwell.
Exactly.
That dude is stiff breeze.
Worst second-round pick since
ever. I remember Jared and I
Brown's
sitting in that bar. We were like, "What? They took Tutu Atwell there?" That was baffling.
Hey,
but
F those picks.
yeah, exactly.
Give
Like,
me
I'm
Tutu
just
Atwell.
getting a free agent anyway. It doesn't matter. But the nerd score.
If they want to light a pick on fire, they can pick me and sign me and bring me into a camp. I'll flame out just as quickly.
Sure. I'll take the whatever signing bonus or whatever.
Sorry, go ahead.
63 is what I had as a score for Tutu Atwell, which was bottom 5 in the class last year.
Yeah.
I have a 73.1, which puts him ahead of, a guy that we just talked about, Alec Pierce, puts him ahead of Wan'Dale Robinson, John Metchie. Like, a 73 is a similar score to what I had last year on Amon-Ra St. Brown, and I was higher on him than most people. Now, I understand.
I think the difference here, though, is like that's a film grade.
Sure.
And I think he would grade out really high on film.
Right.
But I think the dynasty grade.
We were talking about that earlier, and that's exactly what we said.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
I think you're probably getting to that.
I was, but Rich does his thing.
Do one thing, I'm going to interrupt. You can't stop talking.
So it would be lower for me, whereas he might have ended up as a top 10 guy nerd score wise for me. He'll probably not quite get inside the top 10. But if I'm taking darts, that's one I'm going to take.
Yeah, me too.
I think I saw enough there when you can see that he can line up on the outside. And that's something else you see a lot. Those guys, typically these smaller players, are always lining up in the slot. He lined up quite a bit on the outside, and that's when I noticed they would attempt to press him, and it would just not go well. Like, he was really good, used his hands well,
way
very
too fast.
quick, very choppy steps.
Yep.
Like, he would get open very easily. So that was the intriguing part to me, that Memphis had no problem putting him on the outside and saying, you know what, like, do your thing out there. And he did very well.
And he plays much bigger than 170 pounds.
He does.
Much
And
bigger.
the vertical is great. You're not gonna get contested catches. You're not gonna get good physicality. You're not gonna get those things. But there's enough with the speed, the quickness, the release, like all of that together. There could be something there. I wouldn't bet a ton of money on it. The likelihood is low with players of his profile. But if there was one guy that was going to make it out, it might be Calvin
He's an
Austin.
NFL asset, 100%.
Oh, for sure. He's going to do
Even on
returns
special
and-
teams. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I was actually surprised with his hands. I thought he caught everything. He adjusted the ball very well. From like an all-around receiver standpoint, he's good. I mean, he graded as a 71 for me, Garrett. So he's
Okay.
He's good.
So back-to-back good grades. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
Really,
I
it really
thought he
is
was-
just Rich that doesn't like him.
It's his profile, size profile.
It is. I like it. Like, he's a real. I wrote down here really, really nice college receiver who I think certainly belongs on an NFL roster.
Former walk-on.
I just have doubts due to his size of being fantasy football relevant. And when I'm looking at these players, I am looking at my dynasty fantasy football point potential. That's what I'm looking at. So
And I hope a lot of people think like that, and he slips to me at the back end of the second round because I'll take
probably
that.
I was going to say,
You're late
we're on the
third.
clock at 3:01. We're on the clock at 3:01. You have the choice between John Metchie and Calvin Austin. Who you taking?
Austin.
Dude,
I think
I think I'm taking Austin
he's
too.
he's going late third, early
Just
fourth.
so much
Right.
fun.
I'm
all the
just
mocks
saying,
I'm going.
just from a guy we just talked about.
I'll give you that. You know what
Okay.
I mean? I mean, same thing with gluteus minimus. He ended up, moving up where he needed to be because in the end, talent still can rise to the top. So he's got the talent, and especially in a class that's a little bit weaker. I would rather gamble on a really good talent than a really good guy who I just think where I feel like I know his potential. And a guy like John Metchie.
What about Pierce? Pierce or
See, I would take Alec Pierce over him just because that fantasy football potential is so much higher.
It's close for me. I'm not sure. Who
I would take Austin, I think.
Would you take Austin?
Yeah.
I have Austin in the tier above. Remember how I said Austin Pierce was teetering between the
3
third
and
and the
4?
4? Austin is in the third.
Firmly in the third.
From a skill set standpoint, I don't think it's close. I think Calvin Austin's a better overall a receiver.
Sure.
But
He's gonna have he's gonna have a mountain to climb in order to get to fantasy relevance. I totally agree with you.
And how long can I sit on a player like him on my dynasty roster?
But Alec Pierce, he could also be similarly in this mountain that he's got to climb with a bad quarterback.
But
in
you
a
know
bad
what?
situation.
I'll know pretty damn quickly if I within that 2-year window get off my taxi squad if I'm getting rid of Alec Pierce probably.
You're going to know pretty quickly, I think, whether or not Calvin Austin offers anything.
No, because I think Calvin Austin will always show you just enough where you don't want to cut him.
He's gonna.
That's the problem. Like you're like, I can't cut him.
You're gonna know he's
like
gonna
one
show
year he finishes as wide receiver 2, like Cole Beasley after like 20 years in the NFL. You're like, oh, there he is. I was right.
He's
Remember
gonna
back
show
in
up.
2022.
He's gonna show up on special teams. I think right away. Don't you think? I mean,
absolutely.
So he's either going to progress from being just a special teamer into like a role on the offense within a few years, or he's not, man.
Listen, you need 2 cheeks to be a gluteus minimus. So then we got ourselves the right cheek.
I'm going to call him Maximus.
Gluteus Maximus?
Yep.
Okay. Well, firm nonetheless. Moving on to another receiver. I think we're gonna that's pretty interesting because none of you guys like this guy. And
Except you.
I do. Kevin Austin, wide receiver, Notre Dame, 6'2", 200 pounds, will be 22 and a half years old when the NFL kicks off. Ran a 4.4 340, 39-inch vertical.
Very nice.
132-inch broad jump.
Yes.
A 6.71 3-cone.
Very
Very
surprising when you watch the film.
second best in the class.
Believe me, I saw these numbers and I was very baffled.
The relative athletic score is
all
very good.
green. Yeah.
20-yard short shuttle, 4.15.
Yep.
Pretty good.
Very good.
Coming off a year, 48 catches, 808 yards, 7 touchdowns. So when you're watching him, it's limited because he played very limited. He was suspended the entire 2019 season for undisclosed reasons. Jared said he heard it's the reefer. So nothing too bad. Just a little.
That's what I read.
Rumor has it.
Rumor has it, hearsay.
He might be interested in becoming a botanist. We don't know. No grudges. Played in only 2 games in 2020 because he broke his foot.
Won't hurt you in the NFL anymore. I think we should mention.
Yeah.
You can smoke weed
Yeah.
as much as you want.
You can inhale. So he broke his foot in 2020,
Josh
so he didn't
Gordon
play
was
then.
a decade too late.
Oh, man.
So when I was watching this tape, again, the limited tape, you can watch all this tape in about a half hour in the film room because it's all there is. It's
For
somebody.
a good reason.
I mean, it's 54 career catches.
One of them is actually mislabeled, or at least the link that I had went to the wrong video.
I fixed it. It went to Kennedy Brooks.
Yeah, sure did. Did
Yeah,
you
I
fix
fixed
it?
it, yeah.
Okay, good. Good to hear.
So 23 of his 48 receptions came over the last 5 games of the year. And the early games were pretty like, okay, whatever. But if you stuck with it as the season got along, he got better, which to me, I was like, okay, this makes sense. This is a guy who hasn't played football in 2 years at Notre Dame. So I like the fact that he got better. Showed me some really good burst. Got some really good, which showed really well. And like he ran those quick slants. He ran a lot of quick slants, and his burst showed well there. I thought he got in and out of his breaks really well. I thought he could sink his hips on tape pretty well, and that showed with the 3-cone, which his 3-cone kind of proved my point.
Excellent 3-cone.
Great size, great frame. I thought he tracked the ball pretty well. I thought he got the line really well. He used his hands pretty good.
His release was one of the best scores that I gave him.
And I kept seeing him like he has a nice like little head fake like there. So he uses his hands, quick feet, and a head fake out there. So he's pretty well nuanced as a receiver there. Blocked really well, which he was asked to do a lot there at Notre Dame, but he blocked.
Kyron, baby.
He was physical, which is fine because I thought he could be a little bit more physical at his catch point, but he wasn't for a guy of his size. Sometimes it's like, dude, just go up there and just be strong and grab the ball. Like you could do that.
He's strong.
Too good for your home ball.
Needs to slow down the change of directions like some of these big receivers do. Only 54 career catches. Already has 2 surgeries on his foot. Contact balance, again, is okay for a guy of his size. Does make some body catches. But guys, this is a player for me. And maybe it's just because it's such a limited sample, too, that it intrigues me. I watched all the tape I could watch on him because I sort of get more intrigued. And this is a guy that I think has a lot to work with. Like, I think he could be molded into a solid NFL receiver. I think there's a lot of room to grow. I think there's a lot of upside there. And I think somebody, again, in the 3rd round, I'm not so when I say like he's not a 2nd round player for me, but I think you're easily gonna be able to get a guy like Kevin Austin in the 3rd round of your rookie draft. So if I'm in the middle of the 3rd round, this is where I'm targeting
Kevin Austin or Calvin Austin?
Kevin Austin.
I'll take Calvin Austin all day in the 3rd round.
See, to me, I think he offers a lot of upside. I mean, Notre Dame's offense wasn't like anything to write home about, and at the end of the year, he really started to come on. Which, again, after being 2 years removed,
Do you know who he
I thought
reminds me
offered
of?
it.
another Notre Dame receiver that did really good at the combine. Miles Boykin. And I think Miles Boykin was more athletic.
Dude,
Miles Boykin was really. I was really surprised
bad
Miles
history
Boykin didn't do anything
with Notre Dame receivers. I need to go back and watch a tape because he said he gave you his best release numbers on your Nerds.
Yeah, you literally called me. You're like, "What are you smoking?" I was like, "What are you talking about? That was the best thing
I
he
was
did."
like, dude, he's my lowest in release. Like, I think he's so stiff. He
really
just
I
looks
thought I got
out
the line
of
really well
control.
too.
Yeah, that was the best thing for me.
Out of control is it the
Out
perfect
of control with his movements. I don't know. It's just, it looks doppy to me a little bit.
Yes,
Just like,
out of control. Is
I need to go back and watch.
exactly how
I'm going to go back and watch.
Get
Describe
loose. He didn't
him.
play for 2 years.
Limber up.
Listen, I started with Stanford, which is one of the last games of the season, and him in the open field in the Stanford game, he was somehow juking these defenders out because I think they were just arms, legs, everything going in different directions. He's almost falling over on every single time he tries to change directions. I think he's athletically, he profiles well, but translating that to like actual football smoothness and speed and the wide receiver position, I just don't think it's there. He's a very, I would say, rough diamond.
Raw. I call him raw.
Diamond in the rough.
He's a very rough edged
David Njoku.
diamond, and maybe a coach has the tools to smooth that out a little bit and get something out of him. I'm not going to take a gamble on a guy like this. He's too rough for me.
Yeah, I'm probably out. Sorry, Rich. I tried to help you for a second there with the release, but that's all I got.
He's big, he's strong, he's fast. I'm just not sure he's got anything else after that.
I love hearing this because this means that now instead of getting him in the third, I can take him in the fourth
or the fifth.
You can take him in the
Probably
fifth.
undrafted.
Yeah, okay. I wouldn't be surprised if he wasn't drafted.
I like what I saw.
It's just like, I can't say it on this show. Damn.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I mean, all three of you guys, when I told you that I liked him, you guys were all like, what? Yeah. Really?
I saw your tweet last night, I think, and I was like, huh. Last time you tweeted out something, I was like, yeah, Rich, yeah, I'm with you. And then
there's like,
this
no,
time, not so
I
much.
didn't see it.
I just want to see if he can get coached up and he finds it. I don't think he's an immediate return guy. I think the potential is there for him.
Let me ask you this. Do you see him can you close your eyes and see him as a number one wide receiver on a team ever?
No.
So he's at best.
Well, let me close my eyes again.
Where does he fit?
Say me and Kevin
where
hang
does
out
he
in 2019.
Where does he fit into an NFL offense?
I think you do pretty good, Kevin. Yeah, maybe. Number one.
All right. I just don't see it, man.
I'm sleeping and need a snack.
I think the nicest thing I put in here was he's got the raw athleticism. He's got obviously the timed speed and stuff like that maybe he could become a better route runner. I'm not sure. So here's the deal. Route running is you can almost like equate it to dancing.
He just doesn't have any finesse.
Some people cannot do it.
Right.
True.
Even if they're technically doing the steps right.
Correct.
Yes.
They
My wife
look out
can't
of
do
sync.
it. Me? I'm a booty shaker.
And he just might not be able to do it. It might not be within his skill sets to do it.
Okay.
To become a better route runner.
Listen, the three of you say no, and I say yeah. So obviously I'm probably wrong here.
Let's
I
move
thought you were
on.
going to say
Let's
right
move
for
on
sure.
to a route
And
runner.
the same thing. It's like I think I'm more intrigued because there's not enough to really it's such a limited
Right.
tape, and like, I have all these excuses why it could be good, and that's why I probably like him. But I'm probably wrong. But we'll see where his ADP ends up. Now, speaking of route running, this is a guy when I talked to Jared earlier today. He's like, I was like, dude, I kind of like these receivers so much. And he's like, yeah, I really like Kyle Phillips out of UCLA. And I was just like, oh, okay, yeah. Click.
He didn't respond. It was an audio message. I got a text message. I sent it on the way up, and I just didn't hear back from Rich.
This is definitely Jared's guy because originally I didn't have him on the sheet, and he was like, "Oh no, take off this dude, put Kyle Phillips." And I was like, "Okay, I'll put Kyle Phillips." Now to be fair, yeah, you were pretty adamant. To be fair, I like him not as much as Jared, but more than you guys. But we'll get to that.
Let me tell you
You're
about.
hyping him up a little too much.
Okay, let me tell you all the reasons why I don't like Kyle Phillips.
Oh, you're starting with the negatives?
No,
It's because he's white.
No, these are the positives. Go ahead.
Kyle Phillips, white wide receiver to
Positive, he's
UCLA. 5'11", 189 pounds. Again, a little bit older, be 23 years old in 2 months when he comes into the NFL. 40-yard dash, 4.58. Pretty yucky for a guy that's 189 pounds. Vertical, 33.5 inches. And I did write yucky on there. Broad jump, 124 inches. Coming off a year, 59 catches, 739 yards, 10 touchdowns. Didn't run many deep routes at all. Actually ran a class low, 18% on the deep routes. 7.33 ADOT was third worst in the class. I think I got those numbers from Mike Clay. Here's my pros for Kyle Phillips. Had a good East-West Shrine Bro practices. Quick feet. Good route runner. Plays tough. Quick. Not fast.
No.
Quick, not fast.
No, not
And he'll block. But let's get to the cons. Strictly a slot guy.
But you hadn't gotten to the cons yet?
that was the good stuff.
That's the good stuff.
Garrett.
Wait, so your intro was just all cons, and now you got to get to the cons.
Yes. Here's a conviction. He's strictly a slot guy. 905 of his snaps came from the slot. I didn't see, even though he's a good route runner, I didn't see a lot of separation there at all. I didn't see explosiveness. I didn't see burst. I thought his hands were subpar. I thought I saw more body catches than I really cared for. His catch radius is small. It's like his arms begin at the elbow. They're only 30 inches. They're only 30 inches. I think he's a coach's. I think he's a college coach player.
What does that even mean?
I was like this. Look at me. Remember that from In Living Color? That guy was the detective.
I don't remember
the head detective.
that.
It was the head detective, and he had the arms that came out. Like
No, I wish I did though. Now.
Dude, if you say your arms start at the elbows, all of a sudden you're a Tyrannosaurus Rex. That's
Okay,
what I'm trying to
I
say.
got you.
Because now
All
look
right.
at me.
There you go.
Yeah, look at me. T-Rex Rich.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, this guy doesn't do it for me at all.
Rich, I'm with you. I wrote a lot of the same stuff. Doesn't have the top end speed, no short area burst. I think he he is a good route runner. He doesn't lose speed while cutting, which is good because he doesn't have any to lose. He just doesn't separate even at the college level at UCLA. His hands are pretty good. I think he's fine in that area. I just don't see how he's going to be a fantasy fan. I don't even honestly, when you look at him, I'm not sure how an NFL evaluator is going to look at him and say, yes, we need this guy on our team.
I don't know if he makes NFL roster.
I think this guy's.
I will bet you so much money he will get drafted in like probably late day 2, early day 3.
All right, Mr. Moneypenny, 36
You
cents.
think day 2?
I think he's 3rd, 4th round pick.
Wow.
I think he's like 7th round, like priority free agent.
See, I'm right in between you guys. I'm like 5th or 6th round.
I can see him being because he's like a player that coaches like.
Well, actually, Jared, before I go, Jared, why don't you talk about why you like him? Because you're the high man on
Yeah, boyfriend.
Well, when breaking down his tape, he just stood out as a very high IQ player. He knows exactly where he's supposed to be when he sees a zone coverage. He understands like when to check it up. If he's open, get immediately open for his quarterback at UCLA. He had over a 20% target share his last 3 years at UCLA. So, he's getting open. He's commanding targets because he's getting open. I think he's a very good route runner. I think he's good at he's not fast. He's not bursty. But he's really good at varying his speeds. He mixes it up. He understands where he's at, getting first downs. I just think you guys are hyping him up like I love this guy.
Yeah,
I think
do,
he's like a
boy.
4th round rookie pick. And I'm going to take a shot on him because I think he's a starting slot wide receiver in the NFL. And that could lead to PPR points.
I think his name's Kyle Phillips, soon to be Kyle Wackerly.
Listen, he was not on my radar at all. And like I told Garrett to put him on there because I did see other people that I respect talking about him. So when I finally was able to get into his tape, and more than what we had in the Nerds film room, I think we only had one game on.
We only had one, but
I swear I think it was somebody from the Pro Football Network or somebody's like, this guy's a 2nd round pick.
I had to dig deeper into him.
So I mean, there's some hype about the guy. Listen,
I saw somebody say he should be.
He's not a combine warrior. Like you're not gonna like his RAS athletic score is actually 8.2, which is really high, because his agility grades were pretty good. But and that's what he shows. I mean, he's a Cole Beasley, Hunter Renfrow, white guy that you put in the slot that's gonna catch passes.
I just feel like he doesn't have as much burst as those guys.
And nowhere near.
I don't think those guys are that bursty. I think they're just very
what
good
was
at
what was Hunter
separating.
Renfro's 40? I don't think it was very good.
Yeah,
I thought his was in the 4.6s. Wasn't
I
it?
think he's
just
really
short
good route
areas,
runner.
like short area burst is what like just
But Renfro's an outlier too.
like
though.
these guys win in
They're outliers. I mean,
they win in 5-yard increments. You know what I mean?
Right.
You don't. I don't give a crap about his 40 because he's never going to burn anyone downfield. He doesn't need to have a good 40.
Sure.
What he needs to be able to do is change directions and get separation in a very small area and get open close to the line of scrimmage. I just didn't see a lot of that on tape. I didn't see the burst that I'd be looking for a strictly slot wide receiver in the NFL. And maybe I have to dig in more because I watched the one tape that we have, I think it was against LSU, and I didn't see a lot there for me to even bother with my time to like go out and dig more. But maybe I need to. I mean,
The
you
one
guys
game we
are
have
saying
in the Nerds film room isn't great. I wouldn't say it's his
Okay.
best showing. So yeah, I think you should dig in a little more on him.
But the rest of the film there's great. You should subscribe.
He's really quick. I messaged a couple of the film guys. Hey, we need more Kyle Phillips. Go get
all right. So
some
maybe
need more Sky Moore.
between now and draft time there'll be more there, or I'll go.
He's low. I mean, I don't have him crazy high. He's like 71 for me. He was off. No one's talking about him. I'm like, I actually like this guy.
Listen,
fantastic blocker too, which is great for
He
a
is a
slot
very
wide
good
receiver.
blocker. He is a very good
He
blocker.
mixes it up well.
I ended up being right in between you guys.
He's gonna get on the field.
I have him at a 68.3. So, it's higher than some of the other guys that we've talked about and we'll talk about in the next episode. But it's nowhere near, nowhere
I was
near.
blocking down here too. I was like, blocks well.
I'm willing to put in more time on any prospect that you guys
I'm
like
not.
deem that you guys have a
I love
higher
watching
opinion
Rich's
than I
face
do.
this whole breakdown. He just keeps looking at me like,
That's your guy.
But
Kyle Wackerly.
all right, Kevin Austin.
but if I dig in a little bit, if I dig in a little bit more, and I
to
see
be fair,
some
I
of
would
the
definitely take Kyle Phillips over Kevin Austin
What?
all day.
Matt, go watch more and tell me what you think.
I'll let you know because
Well, that's it for this
after
show.
tax season.
on a low note. We'll be
We had
back.
like 4 really good ones in a row to start it off.
We'll be back next week to wrap up the wide receivers. Of course, if you're a Nerd Herd member, we're going to jump in, kick it off with Treylon Burks. Next episode, we're going to talk about Treylon Burks. We're going to talk about Christian Watson. We're going to talk about Justin Ross. We're going to talk about Wan'Dale Robinson. We're going to also break down Reggie Robertson and Braylon Sanders and Velus Jones on that show. So if you want to listen to those shows, again, another perk of being a Nerd Herd member is you get not just one podcast for your drive time, you get 2 podcasts for your drive time. And right now, if for your listeners, if you use the promo code ROOKIE, you get the bonus podcast. You get the Dynasty GM. You get the film room so you can watch how bad Kyle Phillips is and how good Kevin Austin is. You get the Nerd Score, and you get so much more at dynastynerds.com, all for the price of a cup of coffee. We all, listen, with inflation going on, everything's so expensive right now. Not us, still the same price. Price of a cup of coffee. You get all this great Dynasty info. If you're bored, you can spend hours on the Dynasty GM. I do it. I find myself on there more and more every day.
Dynasty Team Audit. We just released a new one on the YouTube channel
Oh.
using the Dynasty GM. So if you're ever curious on how we use the Dynasty GM, go to the YouTube channel, subscribe, check out the Dynasty Team Audit.
Yeah, and another perk of being a Nerd Herd member is going forward, all team audits will be from Nerd Herd members. And we're going to come up with some creative ways to give those team audits away. And I know how we're going to give those away on the Nerd Herd shows. So,
Oh, there we go.
yeah, if you want to get your team audited, you got to listen to Nerd Herd shows. You got to hear me lisp it away.
Once we get that Discord set up.
What'd you call me?
Discord.
Oh, you
Once we get that set up.
take your pervert.
Yeah, you shut your mouth when you're talking to him.
Let's get to the next episode.
Adios.